Ahoy, and welcome back to the Workaround. My name is Bob Gilbreth, and you are in good company with a whole bunch of fellow entrepreneurs and innovators who follow my stories from a career in tech startups and corporate innovation. As you may have heard before, I'm sitting here right now to make you think, smile, and discover a shortcut to success or maybe a trap to avoid. And I'm excited. This is the end of the year. Everybody's doing their end of year stuff. I am now in the third year of doing my version of this, which is looking back on the meetings that I have had. And some new things, some new surprises. I call this one How I'm Meeting People Now, the third annual review of hundreds of meetings, now new and improved. All right, let's get into it. In December 2023, I looked back on the past year of the meetings that I had and tried to just capture what mattered. Back then, it was all about numbers and measuring through how many meetings I had and what types and things like that. And that was the big takeaway. I had a surprise, pretty giant number of 421 people that I met with, either in one-on-one or in very small group settings. And then I did a look back on my calendar and saw a bunch of other data and trends there too. Of course, created a spreadsheet. I got to see there was a seasonal peak in spring in my meetings. I also learned that most of them were virtual. 76% of those meetings with people in 2023 were virtual. And I was also kind of surprised that 42% were with people I had not met before, which seemed kind of high to me. Then again, in December 2024, just last year, I decided, well, let's look back at the calendar. This time, my meeting number was down from 421 to 307. And I saw in my analysis that this decline was mainly due to launching 2 businesses in 2023, but just 1 new business in 2024. Data-wise, the breakouts are pretty similar. I think I had 69% of meetings were virtual instead of 76. But a little bit of an increase. I think 50% of my meetings were with people I had not met before, up slightly from 42. But the real big takeaway I had in looking back, and I've got links to these you can see in my Substack post, was more qualitative than quantitative. And it was the realization that I just really enjoyed what I started calling the dance of meetings. And I really wanted to be a better meeting partner in 2025. Here we are. That's another year later. I did not stop meeting people. And I've been thinking over the year about the posts that I'm going to share right now and the insights that I'm going to share. So here for you, I've got a lot less data, much more signal though. And if you are shopping for a New Year's resolution, I've got a few tips that might make it an excellent year for you and the people that you spend time with. All right. So I went into 2025 expecting to have fewer meetings, and that was the case. As I said before, in previous meetings, I had multiple businesses to get off the ground. I often had a key role in kind of feeling out and pitching early clients and partners. But in 2025, we had no plans and didn't launch any new companies off the ground. Meanwhile, our existing businesses were doing really well with the CEOs that were at the helm of them. So in looking back in the past year, I was not surprised to see my meeting total was down to like 181, almost just a little more than half of where they were last year. And even fewer than 1 meeting per business day. Wow. I can't remember the last time I had such an empty calendar. Don't worry, I put it to use. But and I still had a good number of meetings that people found me through Substack, LinkedIn, and my network of trusted friends who think of me when they or their friends need some advice or input. And we're going to come back to advice here. It's going to be a theme or not a theme. But anyway, I decided to treat my meetings in 2025 more like a job. As I said last year, I love the dance, but I wanted to get better. And if this is the main thing that I'm doing now, it's trying to treat it seriously and treat it like a job. But even job's really not the right word. I guess it's more like responsibility, because a lot of these meetings involved people asking for my help in something very important to their careers. So it's time to take this more seriously. And my friends will also tell you that I'm a guy who doesn't do anything half-assed. I'm either whole-assed or no-assed. So I treated this past year as a year-long research and experimentation project to improve my ability to meet people. I read a bunch of psychology books. I consumed hundreds of hours of podcasts and YouTube videos about coaching. And I also kept before and after notes to myself about the people that I met with and what did and didn't go well. And at the end of a lot of these meetings, I even asked for feedback. How did I do in helping you? And then I kind of monitored how people did over time. Did they seem to be happy? Did they seem to be making good decisions? And what were they sharing? So here are some of the significant discoveries and improvements that I made. And I've got some loose titles here. So the first one is pick a process, any process. And this really hits on the fact that I've always had an objective and strategic approach when doing anything in business, especially having meetings, like pitching any one of the dozens of business concepts that I've tried to sell over the decades. By having some kind of a plan of action that helped me get the right mindset going in and ensure some consistency that would then pay off in insights and results. But with these meetings I've had where people are asking me for advice or input, I always just kind of winged it. That was not going to be good enough anymore. So I started off with an objective. That was use my experience and availability to help people at career crossroads. Sound good? I thought so. Now, it mainly helped me, and I think the people I met with, because it kind of put me in a customer-focused mindset. It served as a reminder to me that these people are finding me for critical issues in their lives, and this is not about me. This latter part is especially critical, and we'll have more on that later too. Okay, so I had an objective. Then what about some kind of meeting agenda to give structure to our discussions? So frankly, I just defaulted to an approach that I had built over time through years of one-on-ones with direct reports at my companies. And that one-on-one discussion agenda was pretty much this: reminding them, number one, this time is yours. Number two, how can I help you? And then as things got into advice mode, I would ask something like, are you looking for input, a direction, or a decision? So now, obviously, helping people with a significant career challenge is a lot different from a weekly one-on-one, but this general approach worked very well with these meetings too. If nothing else, it gave me some structure and allowed me to tweak and see how the conversations went over time. And even paying attention to how the conversations go was a lot different than what I have in the past. So that was some structure for the discussions. The next one I call meeting expectations. So with a focus on making the most of this time, I did start to see some areas for improvement. For example, I often get introduced to people who are seeking a new job by friends who want to help them. The conversations can range widely from there. We might be reviewing their resume, making intros, or getting into deep discussions about career shifts that they may do and things that impact their lives way beyond work. However, I've kind of become disconnected from which companies are hiring, and I really hate disappointing people who are hoping that I'm their side door into the perfect intro. Meanwhile, I think I've gotten a lot better over time at having these kind of deeper life career conversations. So I came up with this kind of blurb that I began sharing with people if they asked me directly, if they were friends asking me for, help in a career question, or if they were an intro. And the blurb goes something like this: I probably can't help much with jobs and connections as I'm so out of the loop, but I'm pretty good at helping people strategize and self-examine to help them reset in the right direction. And what I found is setting expectations like this really helped the people who were in pure networking mode save time. In other words, come to me later when you want to talk the big picture. I'm not going to be able to help with the quick intros. Meanwhile, for the people who did grab the time after reading that blurb, it set the stage for a very meaningful conversation. It's like both consciously and unconsciously, people showed up primed to get down to something real. Once I started sending this message, the small talk was a lot shorter, and the output, I think, became much more interesting. Then another thing kind of in that realm that I did at the start of meetings, after usually people, they kind of like want to get something off their chest. They kind of set up, here's the situation, the first five, a couple small talk. There's always small talk, of course, but then there's like, okay, here's why I'm here. And they kind of share it, put it out for me. And what I've started doing again to try to get to how deep can we go here is something that I've borrowed from the Matrix. So I say, little secret, you can try this at home. Hey, there are two ways we could take this conversation. If you take the blue pill, we can get into the strategies, tactics, pros and cons of your decision. But if you take the red pill, we're going to pull way back to the deeper life questions that are going on inside you. Since I started doing this a few months ago, everyone has chosen the red pill, which is awesome. Okay, so the next big one I call out of my head. And this is the biggest room for improvement that I saw in the past year. I finally learned to stop putting my ideas in other people's heads. Still working on it, but I made a lot of progress. And I have to give credit to my friend Meredith on this one for helping to see this error that I inflicted on so many people in the past. Meredith approached me early in the year to get my feedback on a startup idea she had. And with her, like with so many other people, I always perk up to discussions like this. Since I've invested years of blood, sweat, and tears getting ideas off the ground, I'm always eager to pay it forward with shortcuts to success and traps to avoid. And I love leading the cheers when people go for it. I believe a startup is the ultimate test for our business skills. I believe they're a chance to put our creative mark on the world like nothing else in business. And I think they are a modern age hero's journey that tests us through both failure and success, giving us the chance to burn our egos and advance as individuals. So, with Meredith, as with so many others, I was full of excitement and encouragement. I wanted her to go for it. But then in our podcast conversation in March, Meredith shared how good she felt after I got her pumped up. But that excitement wore away soon after, and she realized this wasn't really the path for her, no matter how excited I was. That aha that I got from her hit me really hard. And I thought about, the similar numbers I've done on hundreds of other people over time. Instead of helping them see what was really right for them, I was steering them toward what I personally found meaningful. Once this dawned on me, I backed off. But I gotta tell you, it was damn difficult. So many times I sat there squirming, nodding in my head, and biting my tongue instead of telling this person the oh so glaringly obvious thing that I thought they should do with their lives. But I backed off. Today, I just kind of go back to my objective. I'm here for them. And I remember it's not about me. Everybody's got a unique path, and my role is to help them discover theirs. Still, sometimes we get into ask for specific advice, but I try to be very careful when the A word comes up, and just now more show some options rather than steering them toward a specific direction. What I've seen with myself, and as I've spoken with these people now, the right path in life is the one we choose for ourselves. All right, this next one I call Into My Heart. The most effective meeting advice I got was from a book written in 1961. I had asked some friends who are executive coaches for book recommendations as I was looking to get better at this. And a couple people mentioned the book called On Becoming a Person by Carl Rogers. I would learn he was an American psychologist who gained fame in the 1950s and 60s. And he created an approach called person-centered therapy. It's a very simple idea. Can't believe it took this long. That the idea is you go in with meetings trying to create, he says, creating a therapeutic environment grounded in 3 core conditions: unconditional positive regard or acceptance, congruence, being genuine with them, and empathic understanding. Show some empathy, goddammit. Rogers, he also warned against imposing our ideas onto others, but he went further, cautioning against any judgment whatsoever. Instead of judging people, the key role of a therapist or a coach or friend is to build a space of trust and acceptance that allows the person to be completely open. And what's really amazing is this openness mainly helps the person truly see themselves, which was an aha to me, but it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you think about when we're in these tough situations, we get caught up in our own heads and we can't figure out the right path forward. It's like a bunch of internal voices that are lobbying for this way or that. We're projecting futures that might or might not come to pass. And then we mostly fear making the wrong decision that's going to hurt us for years to come. But a good friend or a coach or a therapist doesn't have those swirling thoughts in their heads. They can, and they want the best for us. So if they're able to keep their bias from interfering, they can bring the clarity that we need to move forward. So Rogers really helped me see that I could support the process by entering into a meeting with a better mindset myself. And I distilled his book into 3 reminders that I usually try to go back in the 2 minutes before I hit the Zoom button or walk off to meet somebody for coffee. And those 3 are: first, be excited about the meeting. This is a chance for me to meet with an interesting person who's facing a tough challenge, and I get the responsibility, the chance to help them through that. So just being excited about this going in. Second, realize that the more open and accepting I am, the more comfortable they will be and the more benefit they will receive from the conversation. In other words, if I do nothing, I don't even have to say anything, and I can help a lot by just being a great open sounding board for them. And then the third piece is accept anything they say. Never judge. In fact, try to forget there's even a me sitting over here. Don't let those thoughts come into my head. Just purely be there for them and be that mirror that they need to see themselves right now. In other words, have an absolutely open heart and meet the person with love. That's the distill of the distill right there. And I have to say, there's a great quote from Krishnamurti. He says, "Love will arise in your heart when you have no barrier between yourself and another, when you meet and observe people without judging them." They don't teach you stuff like this in business school, my friends, but I eagerly began to practice Rogers' method. I will say another big chunk here is there's a lot of physical stuff that comes into play. And I became aware that even on Zoom, crossed arms, crossed legs, things like that can create an unconscious feeling of defensiveness, that I'm putting up a barrier or a wall that the other person unconsciously senses, and it doesn't allow them to react well and feel that they're accepted. Also, eye contact is critical. Keep those eyes going. Smiles and head nods are great. They encourage people to keep going. And by the way, you don't have to remind yourself to smile. When you have the truly open heart and you think about those priming points, it just kind of comes naturally. Like, wow, here we are. It's, again, you have to put yourself as many lists as you might think you have to do once you have that open heart mentality. Also, other stuff, distractions, get them away, tie the dog up, phones off the table, other laptop windows closed, close all that other stuff because it's going to be your enemy and it's going to be their enemy. They're going to not get the help that they need because you're distracted. The other thing that's just amazing out of this is that people do open up, because getting full attention of another person is, in this day and age, it's so rare that it's noticed and it's rewarded. And so for me, having more of this open mind and heart, it led me to be a better listener. And then that got deeper trust with people so that we could dig into really deep topics that then sparked my curiosity more. So it's like a cyclical effect there. And then as I listened better and was more curious, I began to deeply hear people more than I ever have in my life. And a little Carl Rogers quote here before I go on. Carl said, as he finds someone else listening acceptingly to his feelings, he, little by little, becomes able to listen to himself. I was completely surprised that I started doing another suggestion that Carl Rogers made. While listening to people, I naturally began repeating and summarizing their words to make sure that I understood them correctly. So I'd say like, okay, so you're saying this, right? Is this what you're saying? Or, I kind of summarize the points and to distill it there. My goal was to listen better and make sure I captured this. But when I repeated those things back, people began having spontaneous realizations. Hearing their own words helped them distance themselves from the voices in their heads. It was like we were kind of pulling their thoughts out from their brains, putting them on an examination table where they could be analyzed as either helpful or not in the clear light of day. Once this happened, and it started happening very consistently, I saw people spark to life, sit up straighter, have more confidence, less fear, and just kind of quickly, spontaneously realize the right path ahead for them. Some people said things like, I feel lighter already. And I swear it was like beams of light from somewhere suddenly fell on their faces. And I could tell that they had not only solved their own near-term challenge, but, at least to some extent, were learning how to be more self-confident in looking inside in future challenges so that maybe they don't need me next time. Not that I'm against meeting again. This started happening, and at first I kind of would walk around to make myself lunch or come back from the coffee kind of in a daze, feeling I was part of something magical, but also wondering if it was real, because all I did was kind of hold a mirror up and let them see themselves. In business speak, I kept going to this thought. It was like, oh, this is kind of like when you find product market fit in a startup. And if you've been there, it's that time where everything just seems to click and the product is selling itself. But in human speak, it was like witnessing a miracle of life. Getting to see someone expand before your eyes, almost like a video game character collecting a power-up. And, thinking about this, as a father at home, as a leader in business, I have experienced some other moments like this when you can see that you unlock something in another person, but never before had it felt so immediate and intimate as these kind of one-on-one conversations. And I can now see how this feeling brings meaning to the life of teachers, healthcare providers, coaches, therapists. It's also what my sister Alice mentioned in our podcast conversation a few weeks ago about when she knew that being a doula was her calling. She had that similar feeling. All right, this last section I call Meeting Myself. And it's really that the biggest lesson I learned from becoming a better mirror for other people was seeing something I didn't know about myself. I absolutely love this job, and I feel like it's something that I've been called to do now. Those who have been following my travels here on Substack and on the podcast, I have written and spoken a lot lately about cutting back on the things I used to identify with. So I'm no longer the brand manager, the marketing speaker, the agency partner, or the startup founder. And I've spent a lot of the past few years releasing attachments and beliefs and projections. My goal has become to better free up and leave space so that I can see what this new Bob is in the second half of my life and see where I'm kind of pulled in to be and what to do next. And so in these meetings, feeling my partner's mind and my mind open and my heart open, it really showed me that this is my purpose now, or at least a purpose now. And in the bigger picture, it's neat because I've always been driven to make a positive impact on the world in a way that uniquely fits me. I can tell you here and now, I'm fortunate enough to have the rare combination of time and financial freedom to do this. And I just love it so much that I think I was kind of reborn for this work. But I'm not taking on a new identity like executive coach, mentor, or advisor. I'm just a guy who has free time for people when they are wrestling with something. I think the title of friend is good enough, even if we're meeting for the first time. Since I kind of had this epiphany a few months ago, it's neat because the universe keeps finding ways to cheer me on. For example, Santa put a book in my stocking last week. It's the book called Uncool, which is an autobiographical story by the director Cameron Crowe. I did not ask for this book. I'm not a big Cameron Crowe fan. I didn't know him. I didn't like him. I would never buy a book like this on my own, but I cracked it open and within 2 days just devoured all the stories of Cameron interviewing legendary rock musicians in their prime when he was still a teenager. And you may have heard of the movie from a few years ago called Almost Famous. This is the true story behind that movie. The climax of the book for me was when Cameron told a story of landing an exceedingly rare interview with David Bowie. It was weeks of hanging out together, budding friendship, and then Bowie finally agreed to go on tape. And he said, "Hold up a mirror and show me what you see." That's my best David Bowie on the fly. Anyway, they go on to have a conversation for the ages. I've got a link to it in here. And it's just really like in the conversation, it's two artists learning about themselves in the process of having this interview. And 2025 was the year that I got to see how every conversation can be one for the ages. Like Bowie and Crowe, we're all practicing the art of creating who we are. And we get to see our work best when we sit face to face and reflect. Through each other's eyes, we know who we are inside. I hope to see you and me in 2026. All right. That's the post. Hey, would you like to go further? Upgrade to a paid subscription. This is where my posts go deeper down the rabbit hole of personal stories and change. And note that 100% of the proceeds go toward new reader and listener acquisition, so your subscription dollar pays it forward to others. Also, I talked a lot about meeting here. So this is a reminder that anybody can schedule a chat during my open office hours. We can discuss questions, provide feedback, network, explore any topic, especially the really cool self-strategizing and examining stuff that I just spoke a lot about here. And no charges accepted on those. And then finally, I'm a co-founder of Fleet. This is a holding company for services businesses. We invest in leaders who are ready to start their own companies. We also do a little M&A. If you've ever thought about starting your own professional service business but need financial or other support, that's another great reason to hit my open office hours schedule link. All right, that's it for this week. Happy New Year, and I hope to see you in 2026. Ahoy for now.